Please be standing for the chair. Please go to his name.
Good evening, everybody. Nice it.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for every seat that has been filled here today, for each mind and heart that fills the presence of this room. Only you truly know what we are setting out to accomplish today. Strengthen our confidence in whom you have made us to be. Set us free from comparison in order to work together efficiently. Bless this meeting today, all those present, as well as the lives of those we will encounter afterwards. Almighty God, you give us new life, new hope and new opportunities with each returning day. Help us to use these blessings to the best of our capacity in doing the work which we have to do, devoting ourselves wholly to your service and putting our own interest aside to seek the welfare of our neighbour, for the sake of him who came among us as one who serves, your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Good evening, welcome everybody, and I'm from together. Do we have any apologies to ask?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Binion, Ben Vicious, Ball, Galvin, L. Ennis, Hughes, A. Smith, Vernon, N. Wilcox, and F. Wilcox.
We have any declarations?
Yeah, can I just add Councillor Warfield to that list? I didn't know him being called. Who's had a minor stroke a few weeks back, so we sent it all out this.
Yeah, but that's fair. It's absolutely. Yeah.
Can I express my concern about the news about Councillor Warfield and hope that the best wishes of the Labour Group can be conveyed to him as well, as we know that he'd had that particular illness, so best wishes to him. Hope to see him back in the chamber very soon. Can I declare an interest, please? I'm a trustee of Burnwood Dear Friend, and that's related to item 16 on the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any others? Yes, Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to express the same thoughts of Councillor Warfield, who speedy recovery and talks with him. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just further declaration of interest, I found mentioning it a little bit later on, so just a personal non-confidential interest as a volunteer which includes my first.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? I think that's it. Okay, can we now move on to item 3, which is to approve and correct the record the minutes of the previous meeting. Yes, councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that this comes under Chairman's announcements, but when you announced your charities last time, you did say that Lichfield Dementia and Bradley Dementia Care Home were going to be your charities. At that time, Councillor Woodward then spoke about the Burnswood Dementia Friendly Community, and you said you would look at this group, but there is nothing recorded here in the minutes, which is why I'm raising it as a matter of accuracy.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Evans, for raising that. You're correct, that was mentioned. And there isn't, I think, in the minutes at the moment. So that needs to be corrected. But yes, I do intend looking at Burntwood. I've not done so far yet. But I will be getting in touch with Councillor Ennis and arranging to do something in the Burntwood area. But I will get round to it in a minute. We've been quite busy in other areas with other matters. So I've not forgot about you, trust me. Thank you. Thank you for raising it. Is there anything else from anybody at all? I don't see any hands. Then are the minutes approved? Minutes are approved. Subject to the amendment. Item 5. Oh, sorry, item 4. My announcement. Sorry. Yeah, I did have a note here, Councillor Richard Cox, to mention that under this, but thank you for raising that anyway. I should have said that sooner. I've been in the process of trying to arrange the LDC civic service and the LDC carol service. I'm talking to people where some people prefer to be here, some people prefer to be there. We're not finalised yet, so we're nearly finalised with it because we like to see as many people come as possible. I'm trying to please everybody where I can. So Leslie will send you out the details of that very, very shortly. We should have it complete by the end of this week. During the last month, I've attended 14 visits to various specific events and to some dementia homes. So it's been quite a busy week really. It's roughly about 3.5 to 4 a week. Some weeks, 1 week it was 7 in 1 week. So it has been quite busy. So I don't think we're on the gravy train feeling this year. It's quite busy and hectic. We're working weekends and you're playing your sport. So it will get busy. So like we've started tonight. So we move on to item 5, a report of the Leader of the Council and Cabinet decision from the meeting held on 27th June 23 and Cabinet member decision number 12. Councillor Pullen, would you like to do your report?
Again, I'd like to submit my report on cabinet decisions from the meeting held on 27th June 2023 and cabinet member decisions. Also, I'll go through those item by item. So number 1 is the medium-term financial strategy. Number 2 is procurement matters update.
Councillor Ray, you have a question.
Yes, could I just ask the leader about the procurement strategy and specifically the Cabinet about procurement performance? So the council's performance when it comes to the target for procurement within the district and procurement within the county shows that those targets weren't there. They are very important to support our local economy in this district and our county. Could the leader elaborate on what plan we could put in place so that the council can hit those targets?
Certainly, thank you, Councillor Ray. So the way that is currently measured means that if we were to contract with an organisation based in London, for instance, but which then recruited all of its labour within Lichfield district and purchased all of its materials from within Lichfield district, that would still be recorded as money not spent within the district under our current measurement of procurement. So I've asked our 1.1 officer to take another look at that and how we actually accurately measure it. Clearly, it's always going to be not an exact science, but I think we do need to look at how we measure that. Clearly, some of the big ticket items that are coming recently, things like swimming pools, leisure centres, etc., will not have sufficient number of leisure centre providers within the district to enable us to do that. So sometimes there's been a slightly bumpy, but I think it's a valid point. And I think whilst we include particularly the social value scoring for our procurement strategy, which will help us allow us to weight local providers over national ones. That's not always captured in the form.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. Does anybody else have any questions?
I'll carry on. Number 3, Money Matters 22-23.
Yes, could I just ask a question on this? This relates to item 3.3, which is just like a confirmation from the leader. The slippage in the 1.29 million pounds in respect to capital expenditure is obviously crucial that we invest in the assets and the fabric of our community here. And then there's also the PRS enabling works. There's other factors like the signage, the car parking around us. But it's had confirmation that everything will be done to ensure that slippage at expenditure will be spent in this current time.
That's my
Thank you, Leader. I can certainly reassure Councillor Wade that all efforts are being made to avoid that slippage. Members who've been here for a little while will be very familiar with the significant slippage that we carry in virtually every year, particularly around disabled facility grants. We've recently taken the decision to take that in-house, and I look forward to seeing that full grant spent each year as we become more and more efficient, and as Lichfield West Midlands Trade Services start to deliver very much as a wholly owned accountable company. And so we are taking all efforts to deal with firstly disabled facilities grant, which has been the bulk of that, but then on subsequent capital programs, we are doing everything to bring those support going forwards. And I look forward to seeing the work start on that later on this calendar year.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay.
Carry on then. Number 4, similar to the district. Noting that we have a vote for this at item 15. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I rise in comment on 4.3 of the documents there around the representatives on the LLP board. Not to criticise them, it's entirely appropriate that we do have 2 of our officers taking part in that board, because the majority of the work is going to be taken over, going to be operational. However, also recognising that there needs to be a political sphere there. Given the political makeup of the council and the noise involved, whether we think it may be appropriate to reach out to Evolve and suggest there is a non-voting observer to that committee from one of the opposition groups, with the view that that can only help decision making and can help opposition decision making, potentially iron out reports before they become reports. So that's something that I'd like to put on record and hopefully you guys will take away. As I think will be part of the statement. Thank you, Chair. I welcome that comment from Councillor Robertson. I think I'm wholly align myself with the principle that leads to making good decisions. So we'll approach it for that.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Woodward, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
You sound like Andy Loader. I have to put you some time seeing you sat down.
I've got to pedestal and sit on the next meeting. I think there will be other comments to be made when this particular issue is debated further on in the agenda. But I just wanted to rise and make 1 or 2 general points. I was in attendance at that cabinet meeting, as a couple of other councillors were, and there were 4 people watching on YouTube. So whatever we think about the public reaction to anything, that's the number of people who were directly engaged in that cabinet. I have to say it was very refreshing, and I felt it was very different from the way the cabinet operated 4 years ago. There were lots of questions amongst cabinet members and some real transparency. I was particularly encouraged that there was a concern that the government, the Conservative government, should be lobbied quite strongly on multi-year settlements for local government. And it's good to see local government as a family supporting that proposal, through the Local Government Association and other
collective organisations. And the issue of social value, which Councillor Cullen's already mentioned, that was music to my ears as well. And certainly there will be a lot of support from this side of the chamber as those reports come forward. But just a bit of a moan, can we get the sound sorted out, please, in the committee room? And can we get the layout sorted out? Because it was very difficult for anybody, whether in person or on YouTube, to see all of the cabinet members and senior officers at once. So, you know, 8 out of 10, I would say, Councillor Bullen, a very, very positive and refreshing way to see the cabinet operate. They're grateful. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for raising that, Councillor Wood, because I've watched committee meetings on YouTube in that committee room, and I felt the same. The camera just pointing towards one area, it's not picking up any of the speakers at all. And that's not good, not when you're watching it from outside. So thanks for raising that.
Peter,
All right.
thank you for your scoring, Councillor Woodward. Let's put it there. If only we'd have got 80% of the seats as well. Final answer to the response report, Chair, is cabinet member decisions, and that is number 1, and that's the leisure centre design consultants. Riversdale was one.
Any other questions? Anybody like to raise? So just raise your hand. No? Okay. We'll move on now then to item 6. Minutes of the overview and scrutiny committee. Can I call on Councillor Norman?
Thank you, Chair. On there being moving to Captain Smith, despite not being involved in big stuff, I used to move the committee, minutes of the meeting, how long they used to do.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Chair, second meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Councillor Norman, going to read out to the heading.
Thank you. One is apologies for absence. 2, the declaration of interest. 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. 4, the terms of reference. 5, the training for members. I will be sending those members a link, by the way, to a short course on LGA free. In the meantime, officers are looking for other training as well, but I would certainly urge people to look at that, because when you're on the task group, you really need, under the Constitution, you really need to run some training, so I'll be sending that to them. And then 6 is the work programme. On that, remember there was a request to move the 11th of December date, and there was 3 letters sent out to members, half of who's replied, half of whom replied so far. So the 18th is out, but the 19th and the 20th are still available. But if you can get back to me, I'll use the democratic way of choosing those that date. And the last item, if there's any questions from that, either whether it doesn't have to be me, is planning protocol in the second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Are there any questions for Councillor Norman? None? Okay, we'll move on to item 7. Minutes of the regulatory advisory committee. Can I call on Councillor Yates?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the Regulatory and Licensing Committee meeting on the 27th of June 2023 be received and where necessary approved and adopted.
Yes.
Right, thank you. I don't know if it's appropriate time, but I'll have a comment about the minutes. Under item 33, when we're discussing the work programme, I did suggest to the committee that on one of the days where there was only one item on the agenda, we should perhaps look at
what the district council can do in terms of standards for private rental housing. In view of what we can do at the moment and the legislation that is proposed by the government at the moment, and that is reflected in the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak to item 32, please, because this was a very worthwhile presentation, where we discussed in enforcement issues, and a number of councillors are very interested in enforcement. In the past, we have occasionally received a list of enforcement issues at this committee, but I am asking if all councillors can receive email lists in future, so that we are all aware of the progress of such issues. Our councillors, I am sure, are particularly concerned about problems appertaining to their ward, because when they're contacted by residents, they don't always know the answers. So I would appreciate it if it could be considered that we do get, all of us get a list of enforcement issues and the progress that they are making.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Would you like to respond to that?
It's me. Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Yes, I appreciate what you said, and we have noted what Councillor Barry said at the meeting, and that will be continued, and also what Councillor Evans said. I agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, as there's no other questions, can we take the minutes as received and adopted?
Yeah, we need to second them, Chair.
Yes.
So I'd be very happy to second these.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Just on a point of order, I think if we're going to pass them subject to an amendment, which addresses the point Councillor Brown has made, rather than offering to just for the avoidance of doubt, we include that as our recommendation from Councillor.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Roberts. So, can we take the minutes as received and adopted as per the amendments? Yes. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 8, minutes of the employment committee. Can I call on Councillor Joe Cole on behalf of Councillor Simon Wilcox?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Before I do that, I just want to make a few words about one of the items we looked at. We're very lucky as members. We turn up at the chamber, newly elected, with hopes, ambitions, thoughts, desires from the population who voted for us, and we do our best to put them to some sort of shape or form that will give the population what they wanted with reasonable tolerances. And that's fine for us members. And then we say, oh, right, that's our job done. We give it to the officers to actually implement it, do what's necessary, look at the legal angles of it, decide whether we can actually do or not do what we want to do, whether it's all these bits and pieces that make up the actual daily workings and how we operate as a council. So when we get an item that has come from, and I say from the officers to us, that will hopefully enhance their working conditions, I think we have to give it good credence and give it a good looking at. And that was that for that. So thank you, Chairman. So thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the Employment Committee on 29th of June 2023 be received and where necessary approved and adopted. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Yes, Chair, I second the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Who's going to be Okay, we will, sorry, still you in the top, I'm still learning. Yes, councillor Booker, you.
Thank you. We fully support the officers on what they do, absolutely, and everything is valued that they do. Totally agree with how they pay, fully supporting it anyway extra, because we don't want to do that. So all the benefits that have been put forward, we agree with. However, we do have some reservations. For example,
On a point of order, could I suggest that this debate is saved until we come to the pay policy statement later with this agenda? To avoid unnecessarily extending the debate at this stage.
a point of order there. We're happy to stay it till then, so long as it is not said we should have raised it earlier.
Okay, we will stay until later.
We'll save it for that.
Councillor Woodward.
Chair, I was going to make that very point. I've been in this chamber before when we've been told that an item that's on the agenda, further down the agenda, can't be debated because the minutes have been agreed previously. So I think Councillor Booker is absolutely right to say, okay, we'll defer any debates on this particular issue as long as the debate is open and transparent as we all want.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a couple of points to raise in relation to the minutes, if I may. I think it's okay with Councillor Powell, start from the back, bottom of Word, because it might be simpler to look at it that way. The second to last bullet point on top page 21, it talks about the committee should consider at the future meeting whether a similar report regarding disability should be developed. I know that's something that both myself and Councillor Birch raised in the previous cycle, we haven't quite got there. Are you able to report whether either you or the chair is having discussions with officers in relation to that point?
Good point, Councillor, thank you for that.
Sorry, Chairman, so, Councillor, you want an answer from this, okay?
You was trying to question, yes.
I'm sorry, I thought it was, and then nothing seemed to happen. Can I defer that, because fortunately I have hearing aids, and at that point the whole thing just went out and I couldn't hear a thing, so I do apologise. Can we have it again, or can you give it to me in writing? Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Robertson, are you happy to do it again, please?
Yeah, not a problem at all, Chair, and I'll use my outside voice to see if that helps out about. So there are 2 points potentially a follow-up. So the first one in relation to the gender pay gap. The second to last bullet point on the top, page 21, talk about the committee should consider at a future meeting whether a similar report regarding disability should be developed. And that's something that both myself and Councillor Birch argued for in the previous council cycle and never came forward. So I was asking if either you or the chair have had any discussions with officers in relation to that, fully whether the chair may not have briefed you. As I'm standing for the second time, in relation to the fourth bullet point on the page, top of page 20, the monitoring and annual review of the impact of benefit, and whether you or the chair have had any communications with officers about the length of that review, or whether indeed it will be a trial.
Thank you. No, I've not heard from the chairman whether she's had any conversations or not. I will pursue it for you though, and we'll get back to you with an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, I was going to raise something under this, on the updated pay policy, but can I therefore be assured that I will be given an opportunity, when it comes to it on the next one? Thank you.
If you raise your hand, I'll make sure you get that opportunity.
Oh, I'll raise my hand.
Okay. So we'll be taking this by number, number one, two declarations of interest, 3 4 updated pay policy statement, 5 gender pay. In 10 minutes as we see. We'll move on to item 9, minutes of the planning committee. Can I call on councillor Murphy?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, of course. Can I just first of all, before I do that, under the listed councillors present, you'll notice that it reads Hughes, Hugh, and then Rushton. The Hugh should in fact be councillor Acton. It has the forename, but not the surname. If I can just amend that, please. Okay, thank you very much. It should read councillor Acton, not councillor Hugh. Thank you very much. I move that the proceedings of the planning committee meetings on the 29th of. It's not the 29th. Okay. I've got the wrong date on here, don't know why. I'll start again. I move that the proceedings of the planning committee meeting on the 3rd of July 2023 be received and where necessary approved and adopted. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the minute.
Okay. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chair. Anybody who's voting for this, and I'm sure we will, solar farm, and Stepfold will regret that when they actually see it built. I live very close to it. It's on the map that are there, and I know the area very well. I think it's going to be a factory in the middle of the countryside. But I'm really rising to actually raise an issue with the chair, the you chair, of planning, which is he did speak for 12 minutes right off from the start of the meeting. And I did raise this issue with him before last year with regard to the development opposite the cathedral, where he was saying at the time that he was speaking on behalf of the residents. I'm not sure you speak on behalf of the residents on this occasion, but I don't think it's. I would like him to review how he approaches planning at the moment, because if he's leading on matters and bringing in items which was unknown to the officer at the time, if we go into details, it makes it rather awkward for members of the committee to follow what is going on. If I was the chair of that particular committee, I would have spoken to the officer beforehand, but I would try and balance it so that everybody has a chance to speak, not lead on a particular item. On this occasion, the chairman did seem to be supporting the motion to approve the application, although there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't, because of, we need carbon dioxide and things like this, which came from in his speech. But for 12 minutes before anybody else has a chance to speak, I do wish you, through you, Chair, actually review how he actually handles those meetings for this one for future reference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Oh yes, Councillor Ashford was next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Marsh for correcting the error in my name. I'd like to point out another spelling mistake or typing mistake in 2 declarations of interest, paragraph 2, last line. New should be KNEW, of course. I'd also like to ask a question about, this is on page 24, the deferred application. Is it customary not to give reasons for the deferral?
Thank you very much. I shall take those 2 questions in chronological order. I thank Councillor Norman for his question. In fact, it was possibly a question and also a statement, I understand. Critical possibly of the way in which I conducted the planning committee meeting on the 3rd of July. The situation with the solar farm is that there is lots of local opposition to it. And there was a solar farm passed just over 12 months prior, in April of last year, which is causing considerable consternation amongst the people in the local environment. The roads have been very badly affected by HGVs, which have been blocking roads, turning around in inappropriate places. And generally speaking, a great many people are against the creation of solar farms on good farmland. I know a lot of people in the rural community, and I was representing the views which have been expressed to me, not least the fact that there was a high impact on some of the listed buildings, not least Highfield Farmhouse and St Andrew's Church at Clifton Campville. I'd read an appeal statement which was pertinent to Alfreton, which was extremely similar to the one at Clifton Campville. In fact, the similarities were stark, and the planning inspector, when it had been refused by the local planning authority, had actually found in favour of the objectors and had actually dismissed the appeal. I felt there were so many similarities here that that point of view had to be expressed. Now, I didn't mention the appeal at Alfreton, but all of the time it was at the back of my mind that the similarities were there, and I think they had to be recognised. The very fact that I spoke as long as I did was probably because there was a great deal of opprobrium being expressed, and I felt it was necessary to make that part of the planning committee. So I don't know if that answers your question, Councillor Norman, but I know that you also mentioned the situation last year when we had the Abel Croft, and I think your reference to that was that I had fairly strident remarks to make. And again, that was against the officer's recommendation because they were recommending refusal. And I was suggesting that I thought that there were extenuating circumstances, not least the fact that the Dean of the Cathedral, Lichfield Cathedral, had actually written to members of the planning committee saying that he wanted Lichfield Planning Department and the committee to actually give approval to that. When you have someone like the Dean of the Cathedral expressing strong views in that way, I think it's only fair that those views are taken into account. Chairman, moving on to the second point, which was the deferral of number 9 Foden Close at Shenstone. This has become something of a bête noire. It's become, or even if you like, a cause célèbre, because we have seen this 3 times at planning committee. That is, I think, if it's not unprecedented, it's almost unprecedented. And it was with great reluctance that we, upon officer recommendation, we deferred it. The reason it was deferred was because there had been many issues. It had caused great concern amongst the planning officers, and the planning officer who was designated to actually lead on this on the Monday night, which was the 3rd of July, week yesterday, had to go off because she had an immediate member of the family who was very ill. So the officer who was designated to lead was not able to do so. It's a very complex one. There are all sorts of issues flying around, and I know some of the objectors are feeling extremely aggrieved at the situation which currently exists. The reason for deferral was simply that there were too many complexities which had to be ironed out before it could be determined at planning committee. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm. Would we turn in the corner there again?
Thanks, Chair. I hope Councillor Marshall will reflect on the comments that Councillor Norman made, because I do review the planning committee YouTube video following concerns expressed by members of my group. The planning committee, as he well knows, is a quasi-judicial committee. And there are occasions on which the chair leads members, which may be seen to be prejudicial to the openness of the debate. So I do hope that Councillor Marshall will reflect on that. But can I raise a particular issue that relates to the change of council after elections? It's been drawn to my attention that when a local member calls in a decision for consideration by the committee, or calls in an application for consideration by the committee, if that member subsequently loses their seat, the call-in falls. That seems to me to be a real gap in the way the planning committee operates, because the concerns raised by the local residents surely continue. I can see one or two grimaces around the chamber, so I may have that wrong, but my understanding is that the calling is not carried forward if a new member is in place. That does seem to me to be anti-democratic, in the concerns raised by residents will still be the same concerns raised by residents, whether they're dealing with the cathedral or anyone else. So they should be considered, and I'd like some clarification on that if Councillor Marshall's able to give it. Thank you.
Councillor Marshall.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I think the points you made, Councillor Woodward, are valid, and I think that it's only right that the call-in should exist even in the absence of the councillor who initially called it in. And I know that the protocol is being updated and revised, and I think that's a point which, if I could ask that that is noted and will be addressed at some future date. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on Councillor Norman's comment and then Councillor Marshall's response. I've worked with Councillor Marshall on the planning committee in the last council, and it was an effective committee. But I would also, as Councillor Woodward, just ask Councillor Marshall, just reflect on what's being said. The planning committee is such an important committee on this in this council. It is so public, and I just urge Councillor Marshall to ensure there's open discussion, and that when there's commentary, and he was describing the commentary he gave, it just doesn't lead to leaving the committee, and I think that's particularly important. I'd say in this the new committee, with a number of councillors on that committee, a number of members of that committee being new and not experienced with how we deal with it. So I just ask Councillor Marshall to take that.
Councillor Marshall.
Chairman, thank you very much. Councillor Ray, yes, I worked with you for, I think, probably 2.5, maybe 3 years on the planning committee. And you and I have always had a very good rapport, and I hope there is mutual respect. And in that vein, I take on board the comments you have made. Thank you.
Any other further questions? Councillor.
Point of accuracy, actually, listening to it, I was able to read a bit more of the minutes. So we have present Councillor Harvey Coggins. Apologies for absence. Councillor Harvey Coggins. So I know she was there because she declared an interest. But that's correctly in terms of accuracy.
Okay, we will take from this now. Page 23. Good. Do we approve all these minutes that we can take it? Approve. Thank you. Move on to item 10. Appointment of representatives on A5 bodies. Can I call on Councillor Foley to speak on the
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation that Councillor Checkland be appointed as a substitute member on the police, fire and armour.
Thank you, Councillor Queen. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose an alternative nominee? In view of the fact that this council is a far different political balance than was the case in the past, can I propose Councillor Paul Taylor as a Labour member to be the substitute for Councillor Cox on the police and crime panel? This seems to me to be a far more balanced way of going forward. For example, on the Health Scrutiny Committee at the County Council, although Councillor Norman is the chair, Councillor Young is the representative on the Health Scrutiny Panel at the County Council. I just think that it would reflect far more accurately the political balance of this council, and I hope that someone will second that proposal. I doubt if any substitute will get the chance to be there very often, because I know Councillor Cox is very conscientious in terms of his attendance at the recent crime panel, but I propose that alternative.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I understand what Councillor Woodward saying, but I certainly I said to you last time, only turned out once, but that was only once was I absent. But I do formally second Councillor Shepherd.
Councillor Norman.
Kind of by way of personal explanation, I did propose that Councillor Young is the one who actually goes to the Health Scrutiny Panel, getting into. What I wanted to be clear on is that there was no plan, a future plan by putting in later later on. It's purely letting her go to the Health Scrutiny. I'm sure she did a great job. Although she better follow the meeting better on YouTube than the actual thing. Good luck.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Two items if I can. One, I'm more than comfortable. Secondly, Councillor Woodward's nomination, Councillor Paul Taylor as well. And then just a second query about what procedure is
Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. Just questioning really whether or not I'm allowed to comment on the fact that we're nominated. If I am, I'll carry on. If I'm not, I'll sit down. Okay. Friends cast off, quite right, very vicious meeting. It's a reason you get top to take on. I have been managing 30 years policing experience. It gives me an opportunity to pick up items a little bit quicker. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just confirm when I'm going to get answers to my previous question?
Sorry, would you repeat that again?
Procedurally, how we move forward with the two nominations that are currently live at the proposed executive.
Okay, I'm advised it's amendment to the proposal, so we will take the amendment first. Okay, so we show of hands, please, those in favour. Sorry, okay, so Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. In response to Councillor Chetland, I would just like to say I have the advantage of not having been a policeman. Which some people may think is a preferable policy to have for nomination to this panel. Thank you.
Okay, can we now move this forward then? Can we have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Taylor? Don't get that. Thank you. You put your hands down there. Can we have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Check? Okay, the amendment is defeated and Councillor Checking will be open at that. Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. We have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Checking. Those against? And those abstentions. Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Shepherd, you are. Move on to, we'll move on now to item 11. Appointment of an independent person. Can I call on Councillor Fuller to speak on this item?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I know that many people find this hard to imagine, but occasionally there are complaints about councillors. As part of the process, we require the council box to appoint an independent person who is on the panel to review those complaints. We have had the service of Mr. Bettridge for the last 8 years, who has served in that capacity extraordinarily diligently. This paper is to thank Mr. Bettridge, first of all, for his service for 8 years, and we're going to appoint Mr. Jonathan Jardine to be appointed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cullen. Can we have a second, please? Okay, let's I think while we move on. Right, all those in favour? Those against? And something wrong. Any abstentions? I'm glad I'm not the only one who's making mistakes, especially when I see you make them. That makes me feel good, Rob. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 12. Temporary appointments to parish councils. I'll call on Councillor Cullen to speak on this item.
You may, thank you, Chair. There are occasions when parish councils are unable to meet their quorum limits, and parish councils are the third of membership, or at least 3 members. The section 91 of the Government Act allows the district council to appoint district councillors on a temporary basis to enable the parish council to call it. And so even if they wanted to co-opt a member, for example, but they weren't able to meet their quorum limits, they wouldn't be able to co-opt to be able to meet their quorum limits in the future. So this is just a way of temporarily adding a councillor so that they may co-opt or do whatever they need to do, or discharge necessary functions as a parish council. We have made it very, very clear through this policy, I hope, that this is about the temporary appointment of district councillors, and it's not designed to cover up any issues that the parish council might have which are underlying. So this merely seeks council's approval to exercise the authority under 91, section 91, local government act 1932, to be able to do that where we so proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. Can I ask for a proposer? Please, on the second.
That was me, I propose.
Did you do that? Did you? Oh, okay. Can I call Councillor Woodland? Did you want to speak? Okay.
Yes, I'll show my support to the League by seconding that. Very happy to second the report. There are often difficult situations that are thrown up after elections. I think perhaps a lesson to all of us who operate in local politics, and particularly those political parties, to make sure that any candidate in put forward is going to fulfill the role even when they get elected. I think it's contentious of the electors, actually, when people are elected and then fail to take up their seat or perform the duties for which they've been elected. I'm particularly pleased that there will be consultation going forward with the group leaders, because this has not just got to be open and transparent, it's got to be seen to be open and transparent. So, I wish Bradley Parish Council all the very best for the future, and let's do what we can to make sure they get off to a good start. Thanks, Chair.
I thank you for that, Councillor Woodward. That is my ward, and I am a parish councillor. And we've been sort of bits and pieces ever since the election. So I thank you for your support there. And for putting it forward.
You took the words right there, Sean.
Yes, Councillor Salter, you want to speak, so okay. Does anybody else want to speak on that? No, okay. We move on. All those in favour then, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Robertson is want to go again.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of accuracy as with the comments that Councillor Cullen made. Referred several times to the district council being able to appoint district councillors, but back down to parish councils. The word in the act actually says that district councils may appoint persons, so that just may help consultation through meetings.
Councillor Norman.
I knew that, as I said to my colleague here, it's just that I weren't sure that the group was going to speak any further on that, on the notes I've got. But of course, I read the act before I came here.
Thank you. Can we move on to the vote now? Is there anybody else like to speak before I move on to the vote? No, I don't see any hands. So those in favour? Show of hands, please. Thank you. Those against? And those abstentions. Thank you for your support there. We, as probably can now really move forward. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. All right, can we move on to item 13? This is going to be a long one. I can see this. Updated pay policy statement for 2023. Can I call on Councillor Cullen to speak on this item?
No, thank you, Chair. I thought this paper was just for noting, actually. Yeah. Yeah. This is the duty of the council on an annual basis to inform the council and the debate on this about the annual pay policies, the annual pay policy statement for 2023. And it is a substantial departure from where pay policies have been before this district council. I think we all understand that local government faces a real challenge in terms of recruitment. That is just the nature of the beast, and that is not peculiar to the district council. It's true of councils up and down the country, and all are facing an incredible challenge in terms of recruiting the right numbers of staff, the right levels within their organisation. That's no more true in the district. But we do have a very good obviously watch of that right there. What this seeks to do is to introduce three particular elements amongst others, but perhaps the new elements that are being introduced is the annual performance related bonuses, an employee referral bonus, and also an enhanced benefit package which includes private healthcare. The thinking behind this is that we need to put ourselves head and shoulders above other organisations that we're frankly competing with to attract talent in our organisation. And the chief executive along with his team are recommending this to us as councillors for the pay policy statement. And Chairman, I am sure there'll be a large debate on this. What I would say from my perspective is that we are incredibly fortunate at Lichfield District Council to have a very, very competent chief executive who is leading and creating a very, very competent office code. This will only aid in taking that further, and I'll fully endorse the recommendations that are in this paper. I look forward to the debate going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak briefly to the performance-related bonuses part of this. And I should say straight away that I think there's a lot that's good about this, and I applaud the work of officers. But I do have one or two concerns. I should say that in my day job, I work for a public body, and have done for 18 years, so I'm approaching being a veteran there. And I have witnessed also the difficulties of finding and retaining talented staff in public sector roles. So that's, and I would say that also I've seen performance-related bonuses elsewhere, so it is something which is occurring more and more. I think they can play their part in improving pay conditions and attracting new talent and retaining new talent. I mentioned that I have one or two concerns. I think we need to be aware of the assumption that moving towards more of a private sector offer necessarily attracts more or better candidates. It may contribute, but it might just be part of the picture. I'm sure we all know that people are attracted to public sector jobs and careers for a variety of reasons. And picking up actually on a point in the minutes of the employment committee at the end of June, this point was made that there are other reasons, a belief in the work. It's not purely about financial incentives and rewards, and traditionally it's often as much about stability, of job security, and work-life balance. And I don't think any of that is contentious. But I'm just aware of that, go against that assumption that trying to make the offer exactly the same in the private sector is not necessarily going to attract those staff. And there is a risk that it may alienate and put off some that would be attracted to a job in local government. And so my overall comment would be proceed with caution on that one. And I was pleased to see in the agenda report a proposal for careful monitoring of the impact of these changes. I think there were others wanting to ask questions on that point. I think that would be a really important point to take stock of how it's going, because the other phrase I picked up from the minutes was about the cultural fit. Of course, I'm sure we all recognise it's about how appropriate the people are with the candidates and who are attracted to working in local government. So I think that cultural fit is something we should monitor really carefully on an annual basis. Okay.
Okay.
So generally I support, but I make those notes of caution.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Trent. Do we have a seconder to the proposal?
Chairman, please a second. I reserve my right to speak to the end.
On the land was here, I think Councillor Trent made some of my sandwiches, so that was what I was going to say earlier. Not a problem. We completely support the idea of bringing them head and shoulders above other councils, and what you said, completely in agreement. But the language that you use, councillor Trent is a concern as well. The language in the minutes, the common practice in the private sector is one that we said we agree, proceed with caution. This is not the private sector. This is the public sector. Very divisive to have a performance related for just a set proportion. I've seen this in the civil service, and when it's just 5% of the workforce get it, the one person that is just below that quota suddenly doesn't become very motivated when they've seen their colleagues around them get it and they don't. So proceed with caution and Councillor Trent said. Second one I wanted to point out was again the language, a good cultural fit. Thank you, Councillor Trent. So this is a risk of bringing in unconscious bias, not a conscious bias, but very unconscious. When we see a good cultural fit, that usually means the sort of people naturally gravitate to, and that is a risk of unconsciously not having a diverse workforce. It is really good to have motivation together, but it must be consciously encouraging diversity rather than using language such as a good cultural fit, which in essence means people like us. So that was my second point. My final one was in the policy. It is nice to see the language that has been used in there is vague enough to give us room for maneuver on benefits. We talk a lot about the healthcare, private healthcare. We can talk about what that means. And if that's the sort of private healthcare that we pay for anyway in the NHS, such as high appointment period, etc., that is very different to get some preferential treatment. We already have a national health service and we all pay national insurance for. So the landing note being able to give us some back. But what was also lacking was some other ideas of benefits, such as access to training and education benefits, such as access to the leisure centres, such as access to electric charging points for vehicles. There's a lot more ideas than some of the ones that we've done here. And I just wanted to repeat some of the things that council can say, proceed with caution on some of the language that is coming.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, I'd like to start by saying that I very much want to support our staff. And I do think that they should be paid a lot more and we want to recruit and train them. However, I'm quite concerned about this 4.2 performance-related pay. I'm retired now, but in my career, I've come across various examples of this. And what I've tended to find is that the people who get it, I find quite pleased. But they're getting a lot of positives anyway. But if you imagine you're in the top 10% of performance, but not in the top 5, then how does that make you feel? And how does that make you judge your manager's judgment of you? And then there's all sorts of other issues that leaves quite a lot of the workforce, in my experience, and obviously I haven't experienced this particular scheme, to be dissatisfied. People then have perhaps a less open dialogue with their manager about their performance, because actually the bonus depends on it or not, whereas actually what you want for a good environment is a very open discussion about that. The only schemes like this that I've come across that have been actually people have felt good about is when there are team bonuses. So the people who work together and the team is awarded a bonus, because that brings people together rather than separates people. And I think following on what Councillor Booker said, perhaps not in the first year or so, but I think over time, these schemes have become to be seen as they just favour the people who are favoured by the top managers. And there's the unconscious bias and sort of things like that. And even if that's not true, that is often how they're seen. So I'm really saying that this needs to proceed with great caution, and however it goes through, however it's monitored, that those sort of issues I'm talking about, I think, need to be looked at in the monitoring of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Marshall.
Chair, yes, just a few words actually. And I noticed that the words cultural fit cropped up. And I'm a little bit concerned that the interpretation of those two words is being taken rather too literally. I think the term cultural fit is nothing more than that we are looking for people of a similar ethos, like-minded people. So when I talk about culture, I'm simply talking about the people who walk through the door all have the same frame of mind in terms of promoting this council, doing the best job they possibly can. So the culture is one of hard work, dedication, and working assiduously for the general public, and it goes no further than that. So I don't want to get hung up on the words cultural fit, but I think they are seemingly quite appropriate, and I would not take issue with them, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Evans.
Chairman, I want to ask a question because I can't find any information on in the paperwork either on this issue or on the previous employment committee minutes. So I wanted to ask if this is updated statement, if it includes, as it is an updated statement, if it includes the uplift for the lower grade employers, which will take them into up to the living wage.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn, would you like to respond?
Yes, I would like to respond with yes, it does. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. It'll come as no surprise to everybody here that I echo everybody else's support for better remuneration for our officers. It will also not come as any surprise that, like many on this side of the chamber, I am slightly uncomfortable with the preferential treatment style of health insurance that may be offered. But health insurance is not just health insurance. There are many types of health insurance. There is a types of health insurance that offer additional services and additional benefits to what can be obtained on the NHS and encourage a healthy lifestyle. Many of the people here who follow me on social media will have known several years ago, I went from somebody who used to do 500 to 1,000 steps a day to one who did 1 million steps over 28 days in February 2019. And that was prompted in part by the health insurance that my employer gave to me that encouraged an active and healthy lifestyle with rewards such as cinema tickets and cups of coffee. And I would strongly urge the council to consider that type of health insurance instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to again reiterate what everybody else is saying, that this comes from a good place and that we want to look after our officers that we have and encourage new blood into the council. I think the most important thing to consider is that this information, these recommendations, these benefits have all been brought forward by the officers themselves. This is what they want. We're voting for something that they put forward as something they need and want for themselves and to bring new staff into the council. So I think our job is to get behind them and help them make these changes happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. There's some good points that you put there as well. Thank you. Councillor, I will come to the gentleman eventually. You are on my list, so thank you. Councillor Sylvester.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I too have had stints in the public sector and the private sector, and certainly from my experience on there, the ability to be able to sign into healthcare providers is something that's been offered at preferential rates to a lot of the members of staff, and I was one of those who benefited from it. In the same vein, we also have the appraisal system, which is effectively run, and I used to operate as well as a member of the public sector, and that is the way that we make sure that the staff have got clear objectives and working towards them. So when we look at related pay matters, that is the way that we make sure that that's being done effectively. And equally, from my time on the employment committee, that information is reported there. So I would have thought that is going to be the mechanism to make sure that any performance related pay is done so equitably as far as what is being agreed within the paper. So 2 points really that I would say from each of those. The ultimate being here is that not only do we want to attract talent, but we want to retain it. So certainly from experience in the planning department over the past 4 years, we have invested in training in staff. We've provided plenty of experience for staff to then lose those members of staff to the private sector. So I'm fully supporting this particular piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
Thanks, Chairman, and I simply rise to respond to Councillor Marshall's points about cultural fit. The very fact that he doesn't see the cultural fit can have many different interpretations does show evidence of unconscious bias, and I'll ask the council to make sure that that is taken into account. I'd also like to say to officers, with the greatest respect, just because officers want something doesn't necessarily mean that councillors have to agree with that. I think the point has been made that certainly the Labour group are not going to oppose this policy. But I think it's absolutely right and important that we should ask some serious questions, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of the council taxpayer and the public who are watching on YouTube. But I just make two very short points I have, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Henshaw, Lesley, could I ask how much this package is going to cost the council?
Councillor Fuller, would you like to respond to that, please?
Thank you, this is a clarification, my question. Are you talking about the private medical healthcare for the money, what the entire proposal of the whole? The whole is a under £100,000. Under £100,000 a year, clearly that. Under.
Yes, Councillor.
Can I make some further remarks? I have great misgivings about the commercialisation of local government. I don't feel that we should necessarily aim at the private sector. We're all councillors, officers, public servants. And I just wonder how this proposal will sit with our electors. That we're making, in a sense, our own terms and conditions of service, which many of them don't enjoy. I have a particular objection to the provision of private medical insurance. As a retired NHS GP, I think it, in a sense, is a vote of no confidence in the NHS. And it was only last week that most of us were celebrating the 75th anniversary of the service. And I'm afraid I cannot personally support it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ashton, did you want to take it? Councillor Smith.
I ask if this proposal will be cost neutral or will the cost be passed on to ratepayers? I mean, maybe cost neutral by increasing the productivity of people being awarded.
Mr. Fuller, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so it's all going to be met within existing budgets, so the budget will not be increased to pay for this. And just what I want to probably point out, we said it's going to cost £200,000. That's less than 1% of our entire wage bill at the moment, what we spend on points on it.
Councillor Marshall.
Chair, I've had the good fortune, if I can phrase it in that way, to have been a member of this council for 20 years. And in that time, I have seen council ebb and flow in terms of the esprit de corps, if you like, which is apparent throughout the council.
And Councillor Marshall addressing this second time during the single play, which is not allowed.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ashton. Okay, is there anybody else you'd like to speak? You just spoke to Councillor Ashton.
Mr. Chair, just remind me that raising the point of order wouldn't please me. Right, there's a few points I'm going to make, so I'm going to rattle through quite quickly if I may. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned by any of these numerous speakers as part of this debate is the simple fact that there is a labour shortage in the UK. Like this is not used, this is not me coming up with some type of weird analysis. This is a simple statement and a restatement of what the ONS is telling us. It's not being diligence. So that is part of, and it's not the only driver, but it's part of the driver, which is making it increasingly difficult for public, private and tertiary sector organisations to recruit and retain the staff that they need.
because it's the nature of the job market that we're working. So it is entirely appropriate that this council tries to think outside the box, tries to come up with new approaches, tries to make sure that we are the employer of choice for local government officers in this area. And that is something which I certainly wholeheartedly support. And I would sincerely hope that every single person in this chamber does. If it's not, I think you really do need to have a conversation with some of our hardworking officers to see the value to the life of the residents in our district. And before I jump into too much, there are some other things that I do want to pick out that are really positive within this document, which we may skate over without looking at. Number one, the continuing reference to Joseph Rowntree Foundation living wage. That is a change that we made during the last council cycle, and it's one of the most important changes that I think we needed to make to ensure that absolutely every single person who works for this organisation will be paid a wage that they can live on. That is number one, to make it absolutely certain that people want to come and work here, because we will not treat our staff that poorly. And that is something which is carrying over, but it continues to be there and it should be applauded. I'd like to thank Councillor Evans for raising that earlier on. And while I'm on thank yous, can I thank the Chief Executive for a significant amount of consultation with me over the last few weeks, leading up until, I believe, about 4:30 yesterday, the last time we spoke about this. Because it is something where there has been a degree of back and forwards. There have been significant amendments that are made, and I particularly welcome the quality monitoring, which you mentioned as part of this, which will be reported annually, because it is absolutely vital that we tackle that scourge of unconscious bias. It's not something which is, oh, well, yeah, if we get to it, we get to it. It's absolutely fundamental to making sure that every single person who works for this organisation is valued on the merits of their deed, not of who they are. I think that's something that we should applaud, that it's in there. It's something that we should be picking up, we should be alive to. And I would advise Councillor Marshall to read literally anything ever written about conscious bias. There has been a lot said about bonuses, and I will come back to that. But before I do so, there are just another couple of things I would like to pick up, and particularly around health insurance. I know the first conversation that I had with officers around this, I was not supportive. I think is a very polite way of phrasing my initial points on that. And one of the clarifications that appeared in this document is, and I will quote the document if you have read it, that this will open up treatments that staff members wouldn't necessarily be able to access via the NHS. This is for additionality. This is akin to our support of the local government pension scheme. Yes, we are already paying for health insurance through national insurance. Yes, we are already paying for a pension scheme through national insurance. We support LGPS because it is an addition, it is a top-up, it's part of our staff's terms and conditions. Secondly, while we're talking about terms and conditions, nothing that is in here changes those terms and conditions. This is a discretionary policy which we are putting in place. We are not stepping away from the nationally negotiated settlement agreement settlements that come through the Joint Negotiating Council, principally with Unison, because it is entirely appropriate that we continue to hold that line. That collective bargaining delivers for organisations, it delivers for workers, and it's absolutely the way that all businesses should seek to resolve difference of opinion between their workforce and the employer. So if this was proposed to move away from that, I would have a very different place on. I'm very glad that we are not doing that, but we are seeking to extend and move beyond. And actually, again, while we're talking about that, this idea that every single one of our members of staff will be able to access things which previous to this may have only been open to certain of our members of staff with particular medical conditions. Actually, what we're promoting here is universality, and what a brilliant socialist principle that we should all hope to adhere to, and long may that continue, and that's why that particular line of this proposal has my support. Finally, I would like to thank Councillor Trent for repeating almost verbatim my comments to the Employment Committee the other day. I expect to see them on a leaflet very soon. Although he may need to reflect on the difference between anecdotes and robust evidence. Because actually the point that we need to make around bonuses is it cannot be proven that there will be any link between the addition of these bonuses to our pay policy structure and any improved performance. People have been trying for decades. There is no robust evidence that suggests that link, as was agreed by officers at that employment meeting. So we have to be very, very, very sure here that what this entire package is designed around is around rewarding our workers, it's revolving around supporting people in work and making sure that they feel that this is the place for them. It's not necessarily about driving performance. Simultaneous, the final point I would like to make is just for the avoidance of doubt, there was a suggestion at one point this was going to be a one-year trial. Now I'm told that is not the situation because a year would not be long enough to be able to assess the effectiveness of this. Again, I thank the clarification from the office call for that. Well, I'm not sure if the chair had raised that and ensured that clarification made its way to me. She certainly hasn't primed the vice chair to be able to answer my question. On those points, I think overall this is a very, very, very good document. I do have some concerns about the additions of those bonuses, and it's a real sticking point for me. It makes it very difficult. And the funding which forms part of that overall costing for this, I feel could be directed in other ways, which would achieve better results for our staff. Which is why this doesn't have my wholehearted support, despite the fact that some of the elements contained within here are excellent and should be applauded. But there is that one sticking point for my I think I get that below 5 minutes.
Are you finished then? Thanks, Rob. Or are you going to sit there and ask to be stand again? No, thank you. You'll put some good points over there. Thank you. Okay, can I now take this? Are we ready now to go? Hold on, here we go.
Sorry, Chairman, I did reserve the right to speak, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I possibly can. Chairman, there was a time the public sector was a very attractive and well remunerated place to work. But waves of regulation and pay policy shifting have eroded that and have eroded public sector benefits. In turn, that erosion of the way of life in the public sector means that our workforce has been eroded by private sector recruitment who can come along and offer far more attractive packages, offer a number of the things that we actually refer to in this, although far more generously, be far more dynamic. And in fact, that erosion means that we are losing talented staff to the private sector. I'm really glad that Councillor Robertson touched on the issue of additionality. Look at pension particularly, and I extend that to the medical insurance being offered within this, because I think that's just one of the last bastions in public sector pay policy that has still continued to make public service and choosing to work for the good of people around you still worthwhile and meaningful to come forward beyond giving you the full comfort of just having worked for your fellow man. Public sector pay policy and the succession of litigation under the equal pay, of which I am not without fault involved in it, mean that wide-ranging pay increases, as I've heard called for, are actually very challenging to deliver lawfully and risk significant backfiring if not carried out incredibly carefully. I was actually even cautious about this, but those fears have been allayed by the checks and balances that are there. And I say to the Council at this stage, the point of staff retention here is every bit as important as staff attraction. And that is the heart of why I find myself able to support this. If it gives members any reassurance, you're quite right, Councillor Robertson, that a year is far too short a period of time to spend in the company of such an excellent and admirable pay policy statement. But I think a number of years, in fact, we do review this on an annual basis, means that we will be able to keep coming back and ensuring that it's working, and certainly so long as I have my portfolio, which will make sure we continue to do so. You kept me very honest over the Joseph Brown Foundation elements, and I take your thanks on board that we managed to bring it forward in time. I've also heard caution from speakers on performance-related pay that it does bring and present challenges, and the team bonuses may be more attractive. I give credit to Councillor Gray because that's an excellent idea. I saw a nod from the Chief Executive at the point at which she made it, and that's something we may need to actually bring forward in the future, but we will come back to you. The concept of performance-related pay and spinal column increments and pay progression is nothing new within the civil service. It has always been there. It has always been subject to unconscious bias or even mere caprice from management. Successive waves of regulation have addressed, in large part, some of the worst excesses of that. And members of the opposition laughed because they saw how far I climbed down. But there are checks and balances, and there are means by which unconscious bias can be addressed, not just in tribunals. And I have a degree of confidence that this policy contains ways to address that. Chairman, I have an aspiration to make Lichfield District Council a truly sector place to work. This proposal that's before us is a sector leading proposal. We are really stepping out of the ranks as a council. It's designed to retain staff. It's designed to build esprit de corps. It's designed to attract staff and fill the vacancies, and mean that aspiring young planners, particularly, just fresh out of university, think I can go and work in the planning department of the council, where I'll be treated fairly, treated appropriately, and I will have public sector benefits, rather than necessarily moving into the private sector, where I get a fat load of cash, but I won't get anything like good about it. So, Chairman, this is more than just improving the terms of our employment. This is about improving the way that the public sector, the way the council in particular treats their staff, attracts their staff, retain their staff, and look after the health of their staff while we're here. Chairman, I'm pleased to second this.
Thank you, Mr. Spratt. Right, before I move this to votes, is there anybody else? One last chance that would like to speak? No. Okay, I'm going to move this to vote, and we're going to do it line by line. It is recommended that all council approve the content of the daily pay policy statement and set out in the appendix A, which includes updates to annual performance related bonuses. Those in favour?
I don't. Thank you, recommendation. Sorry.
No, I'm going to take them line by line. We're doing 2.1 and 2.2. Okay. Okay, we do 2.1. And 2.2.
Yeah, there's one recommendation from the council, I think, to take a vote on. Separately.
Okay, and take the recommendation as a whole. So all those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? Okay, the proposal is carried. Thank you. We move on to item 14. The medium-term financial stuff. Can I call on Councillor Strachan to speak on this item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully a far shorter debate than last time. Last year, this authority made a bid to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And while the main grant was accepted in the previous financial year, we've also been granted £400,000 from the Rural England Prosperity Funding elements of that. Unfortunately, that is beyond my cabinet authority limit to accept that, and that requires the approval of council. The motion therefore could be summarised as someone wants to give us £400,000. Can we do it? I say moved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Strachan. I have a seconder for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Anybody got a question? I'm going to go Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. At some point, I promise to get sick of the sound of my own voice, but can't promise when. Yeah, I mean, if Westminster actually want to give us some money, then yes, please, because as Councillor Stratton has already alluded to, successive cuts after cut after cut after austerity after cut after austerity has damaged local council. I think we'll have a similar conversation in January when we set the budget, when we will be talking about cuts after austerity after cuts down in local councils. So if they're actually going to try and do something to put capital money back into councils around to deliver for our community, we absolutely 100% should accept that. However, we are talking here about the better part of £500,000. This is £400,000 worth of money that belongs to the people of our district, and very clearly by the nature of where it's come from, by rural population within that district. I am concerned that we should be including in amongst these recommendations that no allocation should be made from that funding without the oversight of council's overview and scrutiny committee. One of the things that may happen, and I wouldn't suggest that this would be a deliberate act by anybody, but it could in theory happen, is that a number of projects come forward, all of which fall below the limits in our constitution, where it would be required to come before council, or required to go through those additional checks and balances. And we could have a succession of bids that come in, which overall all look very laudable and very positive, but could be agreed potentially by cabinet member with no oversight of that. Now, I will say again, this is not an accusation. I would not suggest that anything would be designed that way, but it is a possibility that may happen under our financial regulations. I would feel much more comfortable about supporting this recommendation if there was a 1.2 underneath it, which said that any allocation of funding from the Rural England Prosperity Fund should be subject to the oversight of council overview and scrutiny committee. I think that would be very positive, and it would make absolutely certain that we are making sure that we are getting proper oversight, proper transparency about how this funding from Westminster is going to deliver for our rural community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you very much, I like looking out for little pots of money that come out, and I love the wording rural, because rural to lots of people means different things, but to me, it means homework again. And I always say, when I look at bits of money that homework again, it's all good fun. I had a chat with Councillor Eady about this in November, with lots of ideas where it could go, so that's absolutely great. I do believe oversight is good, and I'd like to second the amendment. I don't think there's anything negative to oversight. I think it's the absolute opposite. Recently, fence appeared within my ward, and I asked a question about this fence to be told, I don't know about it, to find out if it was a cabinet paper or under a cabinet and was not. And it was signed, it passed up, and £10,000 was spent within our ward with no oversight, no scrutiny. Board member didn't know about it. These things in my eyes are negative. I think the worst thing in the world as a councillor is that something happened within your ward and a resident come forward to you and go, did you know about this? And you go, no, I'm just a councillor, why would I know about this? Overview is good, and I think if we can add this to that, just to make sure there is some check to what happens and where that will be spent. They're not absorbed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pope. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. I simply obviously welcome the 400,000 for rural business and communities, so especially if we can somehow work out where we're going to put the actual travel in. Because that will take some thinking, but I welcome it and certainly support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Joan. I'm not sure whether I'm speaking in wine or speaking on a formal amendment. But if I deal with capital point first, I'm not against you, capital, and I can see the sense of where your concern is coming from, and in fact, in terms of allocations, the example Councillor Emerson raised, I share that. I find it difficult to see how that governance structure could work, given that this is effectively microgrants. And if I'm going to take every single one through scrutiny, I fear that may give us a red tape nightmare from which it will be difficult to escape. But rather than proposing a 2.2, I wonder whether Councillor Robertson would allow me to have discussions about the governance with him and members of the group, my shadow. That we can get something satisfactory in place that the Labour group can find that they can support. Because I don't want to stand in the way of accepting this grant, but I agree with the way that it's disposed of. Firstly, nothing in conformity with the terms in which it's granted, those codes are set out there. But secondly, has to be done appropriately and with good oversight. And I fear this may be using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and there are probably better ways to secure governance on that. So I will undertake to have that conversation, but I cannot agree to it.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Before Councillor Marshall shouts at me, because I am specifically rising in reply to a comment reference to me, I do have the rights to reply. I haven't thought of reading that constitution would be so helpful. Right, I'll make it very quick. I deliberately worded that it's numbered 1.1 in the document. Worded that 2.2 as subject to the oversight of the council's own streets and briefing. However, it could come as an overall list. It could come as a today we have had X number, which are going to go into these particular areas. Having said that, if we don't believe that level of formality is going to be required, I'm prepared to gather member at his word on that point. I'm happy to withdraw that, subject to those assurances you've already provided about ensuring that there is some openness and transparency. Just before I will play my seat, Chair, if I may, transparency I think is also really key, and one of the real values of voting scrutiny is that it is public. So as it's valuable as it will be to have those important conversations, I think the finances will be made in public, certainly because the public can see what it too. So on that basis, I'm happy to withdraw it.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Woodward.
That's Chair, is Councillor Stratton going to formally amend the recommendation of that clarification? Because this is about openness and transparency, and I said in an earlier debate, it isn't just about being open and transparent, it's about being seen to be open and transparent. And that all backbench members, cabinet members, all members have the same opportunity to comment on proposals which affect their own wards. So, as Councillor Robertson's withdrawn his proposed amendments, and I can understand all of the reasons why and I accept them, perhaps Councillor Stratton can come up with a form of words that does ensure that local members get sight of and can share with colleagues to any decisions that are made on the expenditure of this amount of money.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Woodward. Councillor Stratton.
Thank you. If I can exercise the right to reply. I see this as a two-stage process. The stage that we are at tonight is formally accepting, right? We are taking no action to dispose of it. Any subsequent disposal, and I accept the concern that Councillor Robertson raised about cabinet member authorised limits. I don't see that there is a form of words I can arrive at on the fly tonight that gives you the assurance that you asked for. But I will, as I said, I will offer a personal undertaking and that any subsequent oversight of disposal of funds can be brought to an appropriate forum. But I don't propose to place that in a recommendation because I don't think that gives you a suitable form of words at this stage.
Okay, Councillor Stratton, we can minute that. Is that Councillor Mears?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Stratton has covered everything that I wanted to say there, but the most important thing that I want to say is when small businesses receive an investment, for that to be made public actually puts them in the firing line. As a business owner, I've come across this where businesses have invested and they become a target, and it's been detrimental to the business to broadcast the fact that they've received any kind of benefits. If it's done quietly and they're allowed to invest that in their business for quiet improvement, which is for the good of their own business and those customers that they're serving, that's a valid reason. But to have that information in the public domain that a business has received a sum of money, I wouldn't advise that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor.
Right, thank you. Just to respond to Ian, just to clarify, it's not about small businesses, it's about rural businesses, and the rurality of where this money goes and gets spent in the rural part. Later on, the demographic, that's what we want to know, that it's spent in the rural area. Thank you.
Councillor Cole.
It really is a point of order. We've already gone from the leader and the seconder. So we really should be going to the vote rather than having the debate over and again. But no, I appreciate that. And then it should have been the vote. Correct, sir.
Okay, councillor Cullen and Holbrook.
Thank you, just before we go to I can just make a point that any public money that goes to this authority, wherever it goes, public, private, or any other local authority, in fact, will be fully transparent about precisely where that money is going, regardless of the purpose of the report.
Thank you, councillor Cullen. I think we've debated this quite enough now. So I'm going to the vote. So show of hands, please, for those in favour. Okay, those against? Abstentions? Thank you, it's carried. Item 15, the cinema for Lichfield 15. Can I call on councillor Cullen to speak on this item? You're a busy man tonight.
Thank you. The paper, which I'm sure you've all read, which has been already been seeking for approval. There are two recommendations in front of you, one of which involves the exchange of a freehold piece of land for the return of a freehold and leasehold piece of land for the Bishop Council, and secondly to update the NTFS to that effect. And the primary driver behind this is essentially the critical breakthrough at the top of Three Spires, which will connect our Birmingham roadside with Three Spires and the cinema, which really is a critical piece of connectivity to ensure people can flow through our good city as easily as possible. Thank you.
Chairman, I just would like to ask some more guidance on this. You know, I understand exactly how opening up the top right hand side of the precinct is good, will be good immediately and very good in the future. But I think it's quite difficult for quite a few of us to understand the value of a large freehold and 6 smaller leaseholds. We're being asked to prove something, and it's very difficult. So I'm not against it. I'm just saying it's quite a difficult thing to be given the decision to do.
Okay, can we have a seconder for the proposal?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to Councillor Bradley's point, if we do need to move into confidential session to discuss the appendices, particularly about the valuation of the leasehold versus the freehold, then of course we're free to do so. But I just caution we do have the appendices there that include the valuations, and more than happy to move into confidential meetings to have that conversation.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Councillor Stratton.
Happy to say, just a point of correction, it's in recommendation 1.1, the second line, the unit's address is actually number 3244 Bakers Lane. We don't have a Bakers Street. But given that it's a transaction, I think it's probably appropriate that we at least make sure we get the name of the address.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you. I was going to speak up on Councillor Braggar's point. I appreciate there is a fair amount of detail here. With the group supports what proposed here. But I'm also taking on the fact that there have been professional evaluations involved in ascertaining the values of the freehold and the leasehold. Appreciate that is complex. And also thank you for the additional wording as well in 3.1 which might be passing further sort of comfort, which makes it clear that what's being swapped, what the council get back is not the leasehold of units, but the service area behind, because that is crucial to the breakthrough. And that we don't pass go, we don't enter into land swap until we have a JV, joint venture agreement in place, we have a contractor in place to build the cinema, and we have an operator in place. And as a group, personally, I take a lot of comfort from knowing that is the position. So in sport, urgency obviously is crucial, and I know the leader is support that. But can I just ask to the leader an update on where we are with the operator, how far we are from getting that operator signed up to legal documentation?
Councillor Fuller.
No, I can't give you a better way of the if obviously, I would love to be able to put something in front of you. I know that our joint venture partners involved and some operators are on frequent, almost daily contact, but in terms of crystal ball as to whether we income that contract, I don't know what to do.
Councillor Woodward, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I can genuinely say that the Labour will be very supportive of the general principles of the cinema, and it's not a get out of jail free card. We will pick you up on details and certainly challenge, because that's exactly what members do. And Councillor Bragg has already raised one issue that hopefully we'll get a clear answer to, and then others may have that opportunity too. Certainly, as far as the bigger picture of the whole Birmingham Road site and so on is concerned, this is part of an important part of that jigsaw. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, 19th of June, I checked the date of the message. I did suggest to Councillor Cullen that rather than having the piecemeal bits of the Birmingham Road site and the cinema and so on, the development as a whole needed some exposition to the public, so that people can see how the bits fit together, because the whole is certainly greater than the sum of the parts. And while I'm concerned about little aspects of that city centre redevelopment plan, we've got to make sure that the whole thing does materialise for the benefit of the residents of this district. I was disappointed, therefore, to hear today the Vision for Lichfield event at the Cathedral, an animation which Councillor Cullen had said was in train on the 19th of June, was shown at the Vision for Lichfield event, but not, and that was before it's been shared with members. I know that subsequently it's been shared with members, but call me old-fashioned, I like to think that this council should be the first people who get announcements like that, or exposition of animations like that. I think you're getting some habits, so some government ministers and the Prime Minister have announced it to the public rather than to Parliament. Interestingly, the slides that were presented talk about the power of partnership. They talk about the meeting of minds and how we work together. Well, can I just remind Councillor Cullen and Cabinet members that the power of partnership of this council will rely on being as collegiate as possible, as transparent as possible. And I hope this doesn't fall into a habit that this council gets the information first, rather than an external event and members outside the council generally. I think it's important for the benefit of the resilience of the council, the operation of the council, but also important for the members of the public that we represent. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Woodward. Councillor Cullen would like to speak again.
Thanks, Chair. On that point, Councillor Woodward, about the animation, that was the graphic representation of the phasing which has been discussed at length with your shadow cabinet member for that part over many weeks ago. Told you the precise phasing that was going to take place. We had a similar briefing with the Assembly, we had a similar briefing with our group. That phasing has been discussed by this council for a number of months, if not years. We have taken the time to work collegiately to brief your shadow cabinet
at length about that phasing plan. The animation which was shown to the Staffordshire Ambassador event today was merely the graphical representation of that phasing which had already been briefed in. So I find it a little bit frustrating that the accusations coming forward that we are telling the public before we are telling this council, which is simply not true.
Point of explanation, Chairman.
Yeah, to continue.
Briefings have been made in confidence. The work of the city centre redevelopment group have been in confidence. This was an exposition that was not in confidence, and I think all councillors should have had the benefit of seeing that animation before it generally.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I rise with a bit of a tangential point in relation to this, but I know at the previous council meeting I spoke about how it's really important as we approach the redevelopment of Lichfield City Centre and the regeneration of Lichfield City Centre following a significant number of years of urban life on the bottom side. That would take a view of the entire city centre and not looking at individual pieces one at a time. And at that point, I was making a point about the potential for using the meanwhile use in relation to the multi-storey car park having been demolished to help ameliorate some of the issues that this council created for itself with the tandem and pedestrianisation Market Square. Actually, removing these units would allow step-free access from that site directly onto the top of the precinct. And I will repeat my urge there, and the urge that's been made by myself and the Labour colleagues, that site certainly think use would be perfect to help deal with some of the issues. It will not be the only solution to the difficulties that some of our shareholders are having accessing some of the services in relation to Market Square. So it will form part of the solution, and I will repeat again that my desire to make sure that cabinets take that on and ensure that we're able to look at this in the round and be able to potentially deliver on one issue while looking at it.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Along with my colleagues on this side, I do have overall agreement with this project. However, I'm sure as Councillor Cunningham will probably remember from his time on Burwood Town Council, residents of Burwood Town have been calling for their own cinema, probably since the days of the 70s when the one we had at Smith's Corner was knocked down. I think that is a rather pie in the sky hope, and Lichfield City is probably the better location for it given the infrastructure that we have here. However, given the amount of money that we're investing in the hope of making a profitable venture in Lichfield City from the residents of Lichfield City, I do wonder whether the council might not invest in some better bus services so that the residents of Burwood can come and visit the cinema and make their way home for a drink or two from the restaurant at the cinema without having to take a £30 taxi or Uber. My colleague Councillor Norman was regaling us in a group meeting about the days in the 60s when he used to catch the bus to a cinema, and the last bus home at the end of the night left about 20 minutes before the end of the cinema, so he actually had to watch the end of the film before he watched the start of it on the previous showing. We don't even have that luxury. I was speaking to somebody from the Garrick a couple of months ago, and they asked why people from Burwood did not come to the theatre as much in Lichfield as Lichfield residents, and I pointed out to him that you cannot go to the theatre, you cannot see an entire showing and have a drink and then get home without spending £30 on a taxi, which, when you add on to the ticket price, just makes it unaffordable for the vast majority of residents in the town. So I would implore the council to look at investing something of the project along the lines of a percentage of this project into a bus service that would allow residents to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Booker.
That just, my hand is on that, but that not just Burwood needs their public transport, but also the rural area, looking from Shrewsbury, my ward and the others that are all. And Fradley. So if we can widen out that so everyone can benefit by the use of public transport, we don't need our cars,
That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Mears, did you raise your hand? No, you just waited. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to some of the points that are being made, Councillor Taylor, I remember my time on the town council with love and affection as I do my time in Birmingham itself. And in fact, I fully agree that actually Birmingham would have been a brilliant place for a retail centre, perhaps with a cinema. Unfortunately, Mr. Prescott. I'm really just, you don't need to make that point of order. Councillor Norman, unless you wish to intrude. London County Properties could have challenged it in the courts, but they didn't challenge it in the courts. So it turned out for those reasons, it wasn't John Prescott better.
Okay, I'm
Going on, sorry, Chair. Burnwood needs investment, and actually I think part of the challenge that we've got with, and it is a challenge, it's a brilliant opportunity the Birmingham Roads we've got there, but actually the challenge to us is how do we realise the value out of that speedily, and then what do we do with the capital received from that, because there are investment opportunities right across the district. And I'll leave it at that before naming any towns or villages right across the district. There is opportunity. Public transport is increasingly and incredibly difficult right across the district. It used to be £3 per to Lichfield on the bus, maybe more than that now. But it used to be £3 to get from Birmingham to Lichfield on the bus, but £2.10 to get right into Birmingham City Centre. So it doesn't work. However, I would perhaps very kindly point out to members that transport is a county council matter over which the district council doesn't tend to have the powers that it requires and crucially the funding. That being said, we are already looking at what we can do with some of the money that we get from the state government to support particularly our workers to get around to the places they need to be. And we're already speaking to transport companies about, if we bring us in into Lichfield, actually what does that do in terms of driving football, and does that make the business case for them for public transport more frequently, more appealing to them? So we're very conscious of it, perhaps without the cash and the levers that perhaps we should.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen and ladies. I think we've debated this sufficiently now, and I'm going to take it to the vote. So, all those in favour, please. Good, and thank you. Against? Even better. Abstentions? It's correct. Thank you. Item 16. I understand that the motion has been submitted by Councillor Woodward. Councillor Woodward to submit the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I won't read through the motion again, but I hope all councillors will find themselves able to support the proposals. And just to add to the information within the motion, I've had some detail, just a snapshot of the needs met by Lichfield Food Bank, which is one of 3 food banks that serve this area, as well as many other community organisations. In 2022 and 23, Lichfield Food Bank provided 9,457 food parcels, 38% of which were for children. This was an 80% increase on the 2021 and 22 figures. And looking at the first quarter of 2023-2024, from the 1st of April to the 30th of June, they've provided nearly 2,500 food parcels, a 32% increase from last year. So the number of food parcels that Lichfield Food Bank alone is having to provide is being greatly increased. And as I said, there are many organisations that are out there operating on behalf of their friends, their neighbours, their fellow residents in providing food support for those in need. Unfortunately, the Staffordshire County Council Staffordshire Cares website is partial, to say the least. They only list 3 or 4 different sources of help for people in need of food. So I think it's time that Lichfield District said, well, we'll do a better job. Make sure that we map all of the areas, the organisations that offer food support, and do that on behalf of our residents here. Because every councillor, I'm sure, would have had an approach to ask where a family in need can go to get some assistance. And we need that information too. So if we can be proactive as a district council and show the county council the way forward, we can appoint a food justice champion, a member who will make sure that this council does what it says it's going to do, that we map the sources of help and promote them so that people know how needs can be met locally, that we bring all of the organisations offering help and support to families in need, we bring them together so they're not operating in silos, and we'll create a food partnership so that each knows the pressures on the others. And I think that whole would be far greater than the sum of the parts. I think I've used that term already tonight. But we also need to think about an action plan, because the letter that we all received from Lichfield Food Bank when we were mere candidates rather than elected members, and which were responses to which were very supportive. I think we need to take on board that we need to do what we can, whether it's lobbying government or whether there are other ways in which we can support families in difficulty, that we can provide some sort of guidance and steer and promotion for an action plan, so that we do make sure that we address all of those food injustices and the hunger as a thing of the past. I'm conscious of the fact that we've all today received information about the claimant count in Lichfield District, which I find really helpful and interesting to read. Things look relatively stable at the moment, but there are some significant increases in wards, including my own, Chase Terrace, but in particular, I'm looking at St John's, an increase of 10, and Whittington and Screwtape, an increase of 5, and so on. Now, each of those additional claimants may well find themselves in need of additional support, and anything that we can do as a district council is all to the good. So I hope that members will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sharon Taylor. Sharon Taylor, thank you.
Food insecurity is an everyday issue for a lot of our residents in the district. And I second Councillor Woodward. We're very lucky to have a number of groups and charities and organisations that do serve our community really well. But I think appointing a food champion will give the council the opportunity to work with the groups and build and grow a network that they and support the work that they've already done. And creating a food partnership will deliver food justice for no one in Lichfield District will have to go in the way. I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'd like to put myself forward for the position. I second Councillor Woodward's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion, and I believe, as I'm sure we all do, it addresses a vital issue. I can be briefer because Councillor Woodward beat to the stats, the latest stats from Lichfield Food Bank, but clearly there is a key problem there. And of course, it's a national issue, it's not purely a local one, but I believe that this council can do everything in its power to help with the issue locally. I think this motion sends a clear signal about the importance that we attach to the issue, but of course, for it to have its most impact, needs to do more than just be a signal. It needs to actually make a practical difference. I think this motion does that because, particularly in promoting signposting to source of assistance, which is a practical difference it can make, and also a positive step to have various groups in constructive dialogue. So I applaud those aspects of the motion. A key thing that I would add, just finally, is the need to seek out and consider the views of the food banks themselves. Safely, obviously, hopefully, but they need to be invested in this. They need to have their say on what they think would be helpful from LBC, and we need to take them on that journey.
Thank you, Councillor. Has anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Pullen. I'll give you a bit of a rest, Ken.
Well, thank you, Chairman, I appreciate that. Fully welcome this motion, it's been proposed, I mean, it takes a pragmatic approach towards an issue that's not, as Councillor said, there's not just been an issue, there are across the country. I think the appointment of a food champion, which really attempts to get under the skin of the problem and actually address the root causes rather than the symptoms will be really well by councillors right across the chamber. I think it's a very pragmatic approach to that. I think we should be rightly proud as a council of things that we've done, particularly over the last 2 years, to keep cash in people's pockets, whether that's through the local council tax support scheme that we've extended, whether that's going some of the arrears from council tax for people who shouldn't pay over a long period. In terms of our very close work with the food banks, in terms of giving our or food bank users access to our offices to ensure they are maximising the benefits, etc. I think those are all really good things that we're still quite right to be proud of. But clearly we can always go further and do more. I think it seeks to do exactly that. Primarily, and not sound like a broken method on this, Lichfield District Council or Lichfield District area forecast fastest growing economy in the coming years. However, unless that pulls people out of food insecurity, then it's all so clearly that's important. I'll finally just say that I think Councillor Sharon Taylor's name being mentioned, so being that food champion, perhaps that should be decided elsewhere. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll fully support that. And what more, I would really look forward to Councillor Taylor coming back in 12 months and reporting back to the council about the impact, and also look forward to working cross party in bringing that to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Pullen. Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I likewise support this motion, as I'm sure everyone in this chamber does. I'd like to make sure that when you do appoint a food champion, that he or she will have suitable officer support, otherwise it's simply words without action. I would like to make sure that we do actually provide the backing to this food champion or food champions if other people become part of this movement, so that we can, as the leader has just said, attack the root causes, not just the symptoms.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chairman. I too welcome the motion wholeheartedly. I just it's been said that we are in the Lichfield district, and we must ensure that we don't focus just on Lichfield City. And there are many other areas of our district that are requiring, to be looked at as well. So it's very much Burnwood. I would endorse the capital district food bank, who also cover Ridgely, which is very much the area that would come from my ward, and the likes of Coleman Brickwest and London. So I want to be sure that we are looking at the district with the proposal, which I recognise in the motion that it does say that, but I don't want us to be deflected. It might mean that we are missing other areas that must be looked at. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, everybody is supportive of it, there's no one sort of said not, so Councillor Fox, exactly what I was going to say. The one thing about Lichfield District and food banks is it's confusing. It's very confusing. I have lots of residents who that turn around and gone, I'll go around loads of food, Lichfield food bank to help the residents of Burnwood, and you go. And having a food chat and having that correct information, that earmarking, it works. We've done this in other areas. We've done the warm welcome. It works. They were directed. They made sure people got to the place for the form. When we be a friend, did fantastic things. It was set up. It worked. We have within this council many people with experience that make things like this work. And food poverty, prices of food going up around the whole of the country is something that we should be thinking about. We've got energy prices all over the shop, we've got mortgages shooting up. The sacrifice of food, you've got to have somewhere to live, people are paying it and they're going without. Some people just don't know where to go. Some people don't have access to that information. And one of the key things that we tell specifically our parish councillors is we're there a lot of the time to point you in the right direction. And having a champion gives us another direction to point those people that need that help. So again, I'm massively supportive of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ennis. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I think most people in the chamber will know this is an issue which is really close to my heart. I've been volunteering with the Food Bank for about 6 years. Sorry, I apologise. Earlier this week, I received an email from the chair. I've already had a couple of the comments from there. The sober one hasn't been mentioned, and that is in the last 9 years. Over 1 million food parcels have been handed out by Ditchfield Food Bank. Now, that doesn't include the work done by Cash Food Bank in Burnley. It doesn't include the work done by Tamworth Food Bank, by any number of organisations, including faith groups, and I mentioned Life Church, who will do some brilliant work around this as well. And that's 9 years and over a food parcel. There are 106,000 people in the church. It is not hard to figure out that that is more than one per person. It's probably not niche. This problem is not something to do with solve. This is fundamental to how many of our friends, relatives, neighbours are forced to live. And I'm very aware, I know, and a huge number of people in the chamber, and I'm unaware of everybody who's found themselves in this situation, but please take a moment to discuss this, to put yourself in that situation of looking in the cupboards, and looking in your bank account, and looking in your wallet, and looking at your kids, and not being able to answer that question about where it's coming from. And if we do not act, that will continue to be the reality far too many of our friends, neighbours, and relatives. And it's absolutely essential that we see some action on this. I'm really pleased to see this motion come forward. I'm really pleased that we, the District Council, I'm sure, are about to take a step to be part of the solution to this. And as Councillor Cullen has already mentioned, we cannot answer this on our own. And I'm very glad this meeting is being streamed, because there are people who need to hear this, and there are people who need to react to it, and there are people who need to go through that exercise of imagining themselves that person. It cannot be solved solely in this chamber, it cannot be solved solely by an individual organisation, but it really will require every single decision maker in this area to take a look at this and to ensure that this stops being the reality for a ridiculous number of people. And I deliberately use the word ridiculous. It's a ridiculous situation that we are in the 6th richest economy in the world, and we are having this debate, and we are looking at a problem which is so widespread about something as fundamental as being able to eat. I'm not going to stress the point and try and make political barbs about Westminster or anything along those lines, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to look into solutions. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I wholeheartedly hope that every single person in this chamber is about to put their hand up and support this. Because we cannot continue to allow people to find themselves in that situation. It's quite frankly disgusting. And it disgusts me to the core of my being. Before I sit down, earlier on I did declare an interest as a volunteer with Lichfield Food Bank. As I have done, as I know I will mention the volunteers at Lichfield Food Bank, and every single person who is at Lichfield Food Bank is a volunteer or on a payment staff. It is a massive undertaking by some real, genuine community heroes who may not be particularly public facing, but are doing
incredible amounts of work to support people. So I'd like to put on record all my thanks to everybody involved with the food bank, and also mention that there will be a collection at Morrison's on the 20th, a day which I am sure we all have in our heads. Unfortunately, I'm not able to have this time for that reason. But if anybody is in a position to be able to donate, I'm absolutely certain the volunteers will be there and will be more than willing to take the donation.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, and then I'm going to take this to that.
I was going to also commend the work of the people who work incredibly hard in food banks across the district to actually provide food. And I think a lot of people who are desperate have got pride as well. And it's very difficult sometimes for people to accept the fact that they do need help and support. And I think it's going to be particularly pertinent in the not too distant future because of the holidays coming up, and there is going to be holiday poverty from a lot of people in the district who cannot provide food for their children during the holidays in the way that they want. And of course, what happens is they go without themselves in order to provide for children. And I think it's important as well that we, as been stated in the motion, that people with disabilities who cannot perhaps get out, it's important that we recognise that there are people that are still behind closed doors that do need help and support. And I know that is happening as much as people can do, but I do think that we certainly need to ensure that, sad as it is, that everybody is being supported in whichever way they can, and that we do need to encourage people who are in desperate need to actually come forward rather than trying to admit that they can't manage. And we also looking, of course, at people who are on low wages and cannot afford to provide the food that should be provided for their families. So all in all, this is a great motion, and if we have a food justice champion, so much the better, which can help coordinate what is going on. And it is important that we recognise that.
Thank you, Councillor. I believe Councillor would like to respond.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just mention the other food bank volunteers, the Cannock District Food Bank, the branch at the Tamworth Food Bank, which serves Paisley and the rural areas. Run in the main, I believe, by volunteers, and every one of them deserves our thanks, as do all of the other voluntary organisations. So the fact that there's been unanimous support, we'll see when the vote comes, across the chamber for this motion, I think it pays tribute to those volunteers and hopefully gives some echo of the time and effort that they put in. Thank you to everyone who is going to vote for this motion, but particularly thanks to Councillor Sharon Taylor, who, in saying she'd like to second the motion, perhaps didn't think she'd get a job out at the end of it, but we're all going to be watching and hoping we can make a real difference. I feel proud to be a part of a council that is willing to take some pragmatic but quite difficult steps to ensure the safety and security of the people that we represent. So very grateful to all members. Thanks, Chair.
Well, certainly I think you've got a lot of support, so I'm going to take it to the vote now for you. So can I have a show of hands, please, for all those in favour? That's going to be unanimous. Okay. Okay, so we move on to item 17. We now come to the questions submitted by members prior to the meeting. The answers have been circulated by email. The members who submitted questions are able to ask one supplementary question. The question one, Councillor Norman, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Not for this one, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. Councillor Cox, would you? Sorry, question two. Councillor Norman, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
This one, please, Chair, thank you. I see the reply. And my question is, does the contract conditions require probably dictate to the host, Lichfield District Council on this occasion, state that civic awards have to be given to all those listed, including the chairman of the British Ironwork Centre, different clarification along.
Say that again, would you please?
Chairman,
Yeah, okay, councillor Cox, sorry.
Regarding the client note, it is in the contract, I'm afraid. I say it, but I'm not regretting in the sense the publicity that has gone forward with the knife angle. It's received an extraordinary amount of positivity in recognising the issues that it's trying to demonstrate. In terms of education for children, only Monday over 100 children attended. So there are sides to it that we may wish that we were not involved with, but to me they are insignificant if you want to point to the reality. The reality is the message that the Knife Angel is getting across. I so far have not actually had any from within the public acknowledge that it shouldn't be. And I think there's a great deal of positiveness that's coming from it. And can I just, in terms of take the opportunity that certainly those that were present, I mean, there were two for me, well, it was for the whole thing to get the presentation. I wanted to try and carry on. I wanted to try and emphasise the importance of what we're trying to do here. Well, I've already said that they are insignificant to what we're the message that we are trying to get.
Okay.
I'm not always nice.
Okay. Question 3. Councillor Button, would you like to have a supplementary
Thank
question?
you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the extremely detailed response. I'm really grateful for the effort put into that. I really do appreciate it. It is noted 46% is district-wide. And I totally understand the largest population is always going to get registered. Completely understood. However, I wonder if my fellow Lib Dem and Conservative councillors were as shocked as I was to see that over 11 years, less than £40,000 in our award. So, to the supplementary question, thank you for your offer. Me being able to bring to your attention any projects that may benefit your intervention. I will certainly be in touch. The question is, are you free tomorrow?
There's a question, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I am in court tomorrow, but then I'm not here to defend it. But I will certainly agree to get something available for any member of the body who are like. I think it's only appropriate to how it does. It is an extremely detailed response. I cannot take all the credit for it. In fact, I'd like to pay tribute to Anthony, who I understand has worked over the weekend to bring together 11 years worth of data to give you a detailed response to that. And so extremely well done to Anthony Thomas. And I hope that at least in some ways it may like out and you can work together on
Thank you. Right, I'm now going to move on to item 18. Exclusion of public contracts. Relate the following. That as publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, the public press be excluded from the meeting for the following